Hello, good morning and welcome to the AM News with me, Mapita CBD. Now, whilst the December 7 general elections were largely peaceful, it also represents the darkest moment for some families this year. In all, 5 people lost their lives in the course of the polls. Joy News' Ernest Menu, who covered the Odododio constituency, went back there and now brings us the story of a family of 7 who have lost their breadwinner.
So we're here at Abola, a community in the Odododio constituency. As you may know, 2 people lost their lives during the elections here. And we're here to find out what exactly happened and also speak to family members of the deceased. As you can see behind me there, that is a banner of one of them, a young man, 36 years old, Emmanuel Dompre, who lost his life. From what we understand, he was an agent for the opposition NDC and lost his life in the process. We'll speak to people who were with him in his last moment. They will tell us exactly what happened.
I'm George Sampa.
Okay, and you were with him when the incident happened?
Right there, I'm with him right there.
Okay, tell us, so what exactly happened?
But we were there as soon as the polls ended. So the MPP were jubilating. They said they have won the parliamentary seat over Odododio. Okay. So we were all there at the hotel when the Senate. So they started jubilating and started doing their jama. Okay. So we were there. So then this crowd is over there with the MP. Okay. So.
And this is the hotel where the shooting happened?
Model Hotel, okay, at Koloko. Okay. So we were there with the MP. So, and the MP is over the top over there. So we the supporters, we are standing at the last floor over there. Okay. With these supporters. Okay. So we were there. And they started doing their jama. So there are people, the MPP people, yeah, they choose that they want to pass through the midst of the NDC supporters. Okay. So they were be given warnings several times. Still, did not stop the jama. Okay. They used them to come and pass there. Okay. So we were there and on the MPP jama. They come along with bottles, plastic, stones, and crates, mineral crates. So we were given warning. We the supporters over there. We the supporters over there said we were there with some NDC tax. The people who were protecting the MP. So they said we should move away with the supporters. So we don't know. So we were there with the Emmanuel Dompre, our brother who was just demise. So we run away. But we don't know where our brother passed before he met his untimely death.
And you were saying that you were also there with tags of the NDC. These are people who are doing exactly what?
They are not tags who were using some arms. So they were just there protecting with the supporters of the NDC.
What kind of person was he?
Oh, he was a cool guy. Was a cool, soft boy. Oh, it's not very that it's not a kind who have some stubborn life. He's a cool boy. He's a cool boy.
And what was he doing for a living?
Oh, he worked at post office.
Let me say that we cannot independently verify some of the claims made, and so we're going to follow up in the constituency. We're going to the police station and also to speak to some of the constituents to establish what the facts are.
Now, calm has returned to Statesman, where election-related violence led to some deaths last week. District Police Commander Superintendent George Aferi Yeboah, in an exclusive interview with Joy News, disclosed business activities are ongoing as usual. He also explained circumstances leading to the disturbances at the Statesman South Coalition Center on Tuesday, saying contrary to earlier reports that 3 people died, there were only 2 deaths.
Far from that. Maybe it is their own way of maybe trying to achieve whatever they wanted to achieve. There is no truth. If there is any, our records are there. If anybody is saying that somebody has been shot, somebody has been killed, somebody has been done anything, If the person fails to report, then it is his own problem. But on our records here, the dead during Tuesday's mess at the collation center were 2 and 4 people injured. I heard people saying that there are 9 people, 3 dead and those things. That is what I have said. We are yet to receive any information about that. I will only entreat everybody who wishes to do business in Techiman to come and do his business. If the person suspects or sees any suspicious character within his place of business.
Now, Parliament resumed Monday for the last meeting of the 7th Parliament. At least 112 members of Parliament will not be returning to the House when the 8th Parliament begins on January 7, either because they were not returned by their parties or they were defeated in their election. The minority MPs came to the House dressed in red and black, saying they were mourning the death of democracy in Ghana as well as the death of 5 Ghanaians during the just ended polls. Parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gakpo has more.
After the fiercely contested presidential and parliamentary elections, parliamentarians returned to the chamber. The minority, clad in traditional mourning clothes, say their choice of black and red is meant to protest what they describe as irregularities in the just ended elections and also to mourn the people who died during the elections.
We are mourning the death of democracy in our country, the discredited election that the Electoral Commission has conducted, a confused Electoral Commission, a discredited Electoral Commission, clearly in cahoots with our opponents to rig the elections and to put out numbers that don't add up. That is what we are mourning. We are also mourning the use of violence in our election, the militarization of elections in this country. We are mourning the killing of 6 unarmed civilians who were only seeking to protect their votes. We are mourning the wanton abuse of state power to arm twist, force electoral officers to declare results in the favor of the ruling government.
Minority Leader Haruna Idrisi insisted the NDC will not recognize results of the 2020 elections declared by the EC because it's fraught with errors. The Electoral Commission has declared that the NPP has 137 seats and NDC 136 seats with 1 independent candidate. The results of the Senate West constituency is still pending. The NDC is claiming they have the majority in Parliament.
We have 138 already. Techiman South belongs to us. Senate West belongs to us. We have won convincingly. Check the presidential result, over 6,000. And we've put out the margin of victory for the parliamentary. More than 1,000 votes. More than 1,000 human beings. We have won a majority, and that majority will not be stolen. Enough of using weapons, misusing the military to overturn results.
At least 112 out of the 275 parliamentarians will not return to the next parliament. Some retired and many others were defeated in the elections. From Parliament, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, Joy News.
Now, the New Patriotic Party's executives in the Isikado-Kitan constituency have dared the National Democratic Congress to prove the allegations of fraud during the December 7 election at the appropriate quarters. Speaking at a news conference to address what they describe as lies being speculated by members of the NDC, the Isikado-Kitan constituency, Secretary of the MPP, Thomas Amos, said their victory was free from any form of rigging.
Our attention has been drawn to spurious and baseless allegations of alleged massive fraud by the NDC in the recent parliamentary elections. We had received unconfirmed reports that the NDC was seeking to rig the elections, so we, the MPP, were alert on the D-Day of the election. Voting ended at 5 p.m. with no serious incident being reported by our polling agents at the various police stations. Counting was done at each polling station in the full view of the public, and the results at every polling station was declared at each polling station. After this, the necessary documentation, the pink sheet, was duly filed and signed by all the parties present. Our representatives went to the coalition center of the Isika Doketen constituency, which is at the Methodist Church Brigade Hall, Iskado. The Electoral Commission officials started receiving the ballot boxes and electoral materials from their officials who were coming from the various polling stations. At the time, NDC supporters, led by their candidates, Ms. Ayen Sudakwa, and other party members, including former Minister for National Security, rushed to the coalition center, claiming the NDC had won the parliamentary election. Their members, who were carrying knives and other implements, started throwing stones into the coalition center. There was absolutely no basis for this commotion. Neither was there any basis for the claim that NDC had won the parliamentary elections when the results from the various polling stations had not been officially collated and announced by the returning officer. Around 11 p.m., Grace Ayensu and her team left the coalition center, having been repelled by the police and military.
A high court in Cape Coast has sentenced the driver who caused the death of 34 people and injuries to a dozen others at Dompase Junction on the Cape Coast Takrady Highway to 5 years in prison. The driver, Mark Merku, was charged with 34 counts of dangerous driving and 18 counts of negligently causing harm. Bridget Kojonyako has more in the following report.
On 14 January 2020, at about 12:10 a.m., the driver, who has now been convicted, was in charge of a bus with at least 42 passengers on board, driving from Accra to Takrady. On reaching a section of the road at Dompase near Commander Junction on the Cape Coast Takrady Main Road, overtook a leading unidentified articulated truck while approaching a curve. In the process, an oncoming bus carrying at least 52 passengers emerged from the curve in the opposite lane from the Takrady direction heading towards Accra. The driver of the said bus, now deceased, together with the now convicted driver, upon realizing the danger ahead, simultaneously swerved to the near side shoulder of the road facing Cape Coast direction. Both buses crashed, eventually resulting to the death of 34 persons, with many sustaining varying degrees of injuries. The accident sparked a national outrage that birthed the Arrive Alive campaign by Joy News and the National Road Safety Authority. At the trial stage, the trial judge, Her Honor Dorinda Smith Arthur, convicted and sentenced Mark Merku, the driver, to 12 months imprisonment, a sentence that is not lawful. She again ordered the sentence to run consecutively and consequently barred the respondent from driving for commercial purposes for a period of 5 years. In default, serve a 2-year jail term. The Republic appealed the conviction and sentencing of the driver, arguing that a 1-year sentence imposed by the trial court on the driver, having regard to the offence upon conviction, was contrary to law. His Lordship Justice Kwesi Dapai, in his judgment, noted that the trial court so erred in imposing a 1-year sentence on the respondent in respect of the offence of dangerous driving. He stated that the act of the driver resulted in a national disaster that led to the loss of 34 innocent persons, an act he indicated cannot be compensated for, and thus the law must be strictly applied. He set aside the 1-year jail term imposed by the trial judge and sentenced the driver to a 5-year jail term. Justice Kwesi Dapai also ordered that the sentence should run concurrently instead of the consecutive order by the trial judge. Richard Kwejenyako, Joy News, Cape Coast.
That's it for the AM News. I'm Apita Sibidi. The AM show continues with Benjamin and Mama V. Enjoy.
It's that portion of the show where we dig into the papers, let you know what exactly is transpiring in Ghana and beyond. And of course, I'm doing this together with...
Oh, Mama V was watching.
As always.
That's my name.
The Ghanaian Times, The Finder, and The Daily Guide are the papers I have this morning.
All right, stick to the rest of it, and I'll start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. Front page, Parliament records higher sit-ins. According to Speaker, accept 3,461 papers, 7 private members' bills being worked on. The record higher number of sit-ins, volumes of work, and major reforms under the 7th Parliament of the 4th Republic have culminated in the adoption of the principle by Parliament that private members' bills should be allowed to fill in the gaping gaps in the country's laws and meet the needs of the time. So there's a spotlight on this Parliament, this 7th Parliament that we will be dissolving midnight on the 6th of January. There's a picture of the Speaker of the House, Professor Aaron Mike Okoye. Also, update on 2020 parliamentary election. NPP has 137, NDC 136. There's one independent candidate, the MP-elect for Fomena, and there's one outstanding. That issue the court is handling. Seek redress in courts, Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council tells NDC. Also, President attends Ouattara's swearing in as part of 3-nation trip. Let's uphold country's peace. That's a call by some security experts. Let's check out what's making the center spread of the Daily Graphic this morning. It says NPRA explores avenues to invest pension funds. 30 tons of e-waste retrieved for recycling. Justify your claims of victory with pink sheets. Majority leader to NDC. On the back page of the paper, water crisis hits Yendi, and the Yendi municipality in the northern region has been hit by water shortage following the destruction of a power panel of the Ghana Water Company at River Dakar last Wednesday by fire. As a result, residents now travel long distances in search of water. Also, police arrest 5 for rioting, burning lorry tires on streets. The Ghana Police motorbike patrol team last Sunday arrested 5 persons for allegedly rioting and burning lorry tires on the streets at Christian Village Junction at Achimota here in Accra. The arrest was effected during a demonstration organized by the women's wing of the NDC to reaffirm the party's rejection of the presidential election results as declared by the chairperson of the Electoral Commission last Monday. So the details of that, how the CID headquarters was besieged, there's a police report, the subsequent interrogation. But I also want to put the spotlight on the story on page 29 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. It says, Ejumako DCE arrested for assaulting cop. And I thought that this story will actually make all the front pages of the paper today. It's a very important story. Interesting it didn't. And even in the Daily Graphic, where's it hiding? Page 29. I had to look for it because I have been passionate about this story after hearing of it yesterday. It says the district chief executive of Ejumako Enyan, Esiam, in the central region, Ransford Kwesi Nyako, was yesterday arrested for his alleged involvement in the assault of a police officer. Listen, we've got the story. We want to share details of this story with you. So if my director is ready to play it, we're ready to hear the details of it. Here we go.
On the 2nd of December 2020, Corporal Frank Mensah was on duty at the Ocheso Police Station Charge Office. And around 9:30 in the evening, a complainant by name Sophia went to the charge office to make a complaint that one Cosmos has assaulted her grandson. The police officer accompanied the complainant and he effected an arrest. The suspect was kept at the counter back at the police station whilst the police officer was taking statements from the parties involved. According to the police officer, he had a call from one Bob who wanted to speak to him, and the phone was brought by another person. On the phone, the said Bob was insulting him, and according to the policeman, it was so irritating that he handed over the phone back to the person who brought it. Some few minutes later, he saw a motorbike 2 vehicles, including the vehicle of the DCE for Ejubako SCM, in the person of Mr. Ransford Kwesinya, who together came with other people to the charge office, and the DCE started slapping him and he pushed him against the charge office counter. He also ordered the persons following him to assault the police officer, after which the DCE ordered the removal of the suspect from the counter bag, and he went with him in his car. The police officer went to the divisional headquarters to make a complaint, and the case is under investigation. Today, 14th December 2020, the DCE has reported at the regional headquarters where the case has been transferred for it to be investigated, and he is under arrest. He is being investigated for assault on a public officer.
So that's DSP Irene Sewa Opong, and she speaks for the Central Region Police Command. So basically, I mean, like if I was doing chi, the cra and say, the DCU, District Chief Executive, I mean, look at the scheme of things. He's a representative of the president.
And
where he is.
Exactly.
He actually led a group to go and assault a police officer, and then released somebody in custody.
Exactly.
You know, like he's got a lot of guts.
The effrontery, the impunity of it. And you see, there are 2 angles to this for me. Unfortunately, I have to criticize the media because on a day like this, we don't highlight a matter like this. It's hiding on page 29 of the Daily Graphic. No other paper, at least from what we've seen thus far from the stack of papers we have, captures the matter. And this is why the impunity goes on. This is why people in high office can do whatever they feel like doing, because they feel we can do it and our ox is God. We are sacred cows and we'll get away with it. See, my 2 major issues with this. 1, a DCE doing something of this nature. We don't cover the stories, we just let it slide. And if we had not brought it to the fore this morning, a lot of Ghanaians wouldn't even know about it. That is 1. But on the other hand, the police reacting in this case, here's the other side of the story. If it weren't a police officer, for example, who had been assaulted in this case, are you getting the other picture? Sometimes when it's an ordinary citizen of the land, some of these matters come up and they die natural deaths. In this instance, it is a police officer affected. So you see the sort of reaction coming to it. I'm saying that it doesn't matter whose ox is God. We ought to be fair to the general citizenry. Over the years as a journalist, I've captured so many stories where you have ordinary people go through brutality. The stories end up nowhere. You call the police, you even report the story, they take your statements and everything. The cases die natural deaths. We want to see some action on this DCE's case. A head must roll. Yeah, I feel you. I just want the spotlight to remain on the issue as it is. And I'm worried because there was a complaint following that there was an arrest. And I don't want that issue to also get lost in the midst of this. But it's a shame, absolutely shame, that a DCE will follow up. And yesterday I listened to the Central Regional Minister who said he failed to show leadership in terms of the DCE. The police accounts is definitely different from what I heard the Central Regional Minister narrate. From the police accounts that we've heard this morning, the DCE actually followed up. He actually also did give some slaps. So he also led in this assault, issue of assault. First of all, I think that we have to congratulate the police for even coming out with this issue. Sometime in the past, you probably don't even hear them tell their own story. So it's a good thing. What we need now is justice. We need justice. It's not enough to say he was arrested and he was granted bail. We need to speed up with the process. Fortunately, he did it against the person on the other side as a police officer. And when you go to court, the police, you know, the judges would believe the police a lot because that's a good source. Yeah. All I'm saying is we've got a good case. Let's deal with it. Let's get some speedy prosecution to this. DCE or whoever it is, once he did this, he's got to face the law. And it's a big shame, big shame. I really do hope that even before something comes out in terms of prosecution,
we will hear something from the presidency because he's a representative of the president. And he leads people to do this as it has been narrated. Can you imagine if nothing happens?
One thing that kills me.
Ordinary people are watching. We could also do the
Mama
same.
B, did you just ask me that question? Can I imagine if nothing happened? In fact, I can, unfortunately. I can.
I hope that
with the antecedents in the past under different administrations.
We need the presidency to say something, respond, do something. This person must be relieved of his duties whilst the investigation,
should we even be here saying this at this point?
But we're saying it hasn't happened.
Should we be here?
It hasn't happened. Maybe
it should have happened a long time ago.
We should be reminding the presidency every day. We'll be knocking on the door of the local government ministry as well, because this certainly concerns you. It's a big shame that we're waking up to this morning after the December 7 elections and we're faced with this. This happened December 2nd, you know?
And these are the things that frustrate ordinary citizens and make people even wonder whether all of this bit about elections and going to the polls and electing leaders, whether it's worth it. I would say as a student of political science, it is worth it, but it is when leaders fail to act in such instances that we all get very distraught and question you. Those of you at the helm of affairs. Let's get to the Ghanaian Times newspaper. So frustrating. Anyway, 44 die, 169 injured in road crashes during election period. Another sad one. It appears it always comes down to this as elections approach, as Christmas approaches. But quite a number of stories from the Ghanaian Times. I'll just pick and choose a few of them. Radio presenter arrested for allegedly insulting and threatening the president. Now, I'm going to focus a bit on this as well, on the back of the impunity we have in our system. I remember, Mama V, I think it's, I saw recently, I think it's Gabi Asari-Otradaku, who posted some time back when former President, may his soul rest in peace, Atta Mills, was being insulted by some people. And the post was, there is no law that criminalizes insulting a president. Okay, that was the post then. And here we are with Oheneba Boama Benny, who is with Power FM. And apparently, he has insulted the sitting president as someone who was given a proper upbringing from home. I wouldn't say it is proper to insult anybody, not just a leader, anybody, even a child, I mean. So that is wrong, but is it criminal? And of course, there is the bit about threatening the president. Whether or not he did do that is another matter altogether. But listening to his lawyers, you know, Adaudu and others, and the sequence of events from yesterday, the things that happened at the police headquarters, the CID, and, you know, matters arising, and even the posturing of the police, it gives me a lot to worry about. Because in this country, unlike in other legal jurisdictions where you are guilty until proven innocent, in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. And so if someone's culpability or guilt has not been established, I don't know. I mean, the things I heard, I just don't want to repeat them here because it's his lawyers, his representatives saying that. But the sequence of events, I'm incredibly saddened by them. And that is why in that initial issue about the police, I was getting on the case of the police, because it appears when they are involved, it's a different kettle of fish. When it's the ordinary citizen facing the onslaught, it's also different. Well, that is that. You can dig into it on page 3 of the Ghanaian Times. 3 killed, 10 houses burnt in the Upper East following land disputes. That's another story there. And let me just say this. If you see us masked up this morning, it is for good reason. Yesterday I checked, the COVID-19 numbers are approaching 1,000 again. 900 plus, approaching 1,000. Eswatini, if that's the new name for Swaziland, okay? Their prime minister has died after contracting COVID-19. Now you PM, they die. Now you... Why? Do the best for yourself. Other stories in the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Police study docket on Ablikuma journalist shooting. I'm talking about Pius Quinin, as CEO of the Ghana News Watch. It's a story we've been following, and at least some successful operation there. We pray for the very best for him. And on the back page, electrical scrap storage facility to be completed June 21. And fire destroys property worth almost 940,000 Ghana cedis in Upper West region. That's it for the Ghanaian Times newspaper.
There's an interesting news desk report on Professor Benes Meda. It says police failed to produce suspect again. So I'm still sticking to the Daily Graphic newspaper.
There were a number of suspects. One passed,
yes,
and there were others. And in fact, following the passing, there was another one who was apprehended. Was it in the Tema area or something of the sort? So there are multiple suspects.
So there's one who is also not well, who's also on admission in the hospital. But let me just read what's here. It says the prosecution and the trial of the murder of former University of Ghana law lecturer Professor Emmanuel Yaubene has failed to meet the 48-hour timeline by the Kaneshie District Court to furnish it with a comprehensive medical report of the second suspect, Opambuo Ejabedun cancer. Last Thursday, the court gave the prosecution 48 hours to furnish it with a comprehensive medical report on Nkansa after his absence from court for the sit-straight on the excuse of the prosecution that Nkansa was indisposed. The failure of the prosecution to bring Nkansa to court because of his health condition has become a recurring issue in the case recently. He's been absent for 7 consecutive times since October 14 this year, after the prosecution had told the court that Nkansa was indisposed and was receiving treatment at the police hospital. So let me just fast forward. The paper has put down the exchange between the judge and the investigator. So the following are excerpts of the interaction between the presiding judge and the prosecutor. Here's judge. When are you going for the medical report? Investigator responds, I will check on it tomorrow, which is Tuesday, December 15, today. Judge says, what dates were you given by the director in charge? Investigator says, my lord, they did not give a date. Judge says, what is the state of the accused person, which is Nkansa in this case? Here's the investigator. He's still responding to treatments. Then judge asks, does it mean he cannot walk? Investigator says, yes, my lord. Judge says, let me know how urgent the medical report is. And then hearing continues on December 29 this year. Okay, so that's the update that I'd give. Form your own opinion based on that. But you can also grab the paper and read the rest. Let me do the Daily Dispatch newspaper. Front page of the Daily Dispatch. The evidence will stand the test of time. NDC legal team seem to be echoing there. Daughters step in father's political shoes in MPP and NDC. Was it the Daily Graphic that the story yesterday that we shared? Well, there's the Daily Dispatch also put in the spotlight on that. The problems over the Techiman South seats can only be settled in court according to the Electoral Commission. NPP's Okoboy back in consulting room after parliamentary loss. A lot of people made noise about this when he posted this on his Facebook. But tell you what, even when he was still campaigning, he was still consulting, if you know him very well. So this is not new. He was only saying thank you and posted the picture of him consulting. He never stopped consulting. He was still working. So that's it for the Daily Dispatch, really.
Let's move on now to the Finder newspaper. And the Electoral Commission has been talking, it says, use laid-down processes established by law to seek redress. And, of course, that is aimed at the NDC. More private capital flows needed to drive financial inclusion. That's according to a study. I mean, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know this, especially on the back of COVID-19. National Hydrographic Office opened in Ghana, and that's a bit of an interesting one. Now, Ghana supposedly has joined, well, not supposedly, has joined the elite league of countries with a dedicated National Hydrographic Office after unveiling the much-awaited Center of Hydrography at the head office of the Ghana Maritime Authority. Now, this is actually a requirement of the International Hydrographic Organization, of which Ghana is a member. And it also issues international best practices and provides guidelines for the maritime industry. So Ghana joining that elite league. 2,310 perished in 11 months, 945, that is 40.9%, killed by motorcycles, which brings back the conversation about the use of motorbikes. And I'm not just talking Okada here, because there are the commercial angles. There are also those who use them for private enterprise. Tampoli, Dr. Amin, key MPs behind Nanado's big gain in northern region. The NPP won quite a number of seats there, making inroads there. Integration of NHIS and Ghana cards sparked surge in mobile renewal of membership. Those are some of the interesting stories in there. There's a bit of a feature that you might take on page 7. My thoughts on partisan politics and elections by Hannah Awaji. All of those stories in the final newspaper this morning.
All right, let's do the Daily Statesman, the last paper for me. Front page, EC directs NDC to go to court over disputed Techiman South results. NPP to probe parliamentary losses, majority leader discloses. And that reminds me, there was a question. Was it the Daily Guide on its online portal where there was a question put to Oseche Mensah so whether or not they're going to admit the Fomena MP back into their fold? What did he say? He said no comments.
He said no comments. That's what he said. But eventually, when more was, got out of him, there was talk about the fact that I think he, together with others, that yes, there would be some moves to interact with the Fomena MP, and even suggesting that the other side, the NDC, was also courting the Fomena MP's attention. But interesting.
He's a free agent.
You did the Daily Dispatch.
Yes.
Ben Efson has been, advising the Fomena MP, Honorable Esiama, not to take any ministerial position from his party, especially on the back of how he was treated, his ousting from Parliament on the behest or at the behest of his own party and all of that. But you could say right now, in terms of Parliament, the Fomena MP elect is probably the most powerful. Right.
So yesterday I was trying to go through the NPP's constitution, okay? It was based on what they have in there that they sacked him from the party. But I was looking at how do you come back?
Let's not even forget the wording of the president. I can't work with any MP who goes independent.
Yeah.
The underlying word is, I can't. Mean to me. There's no way I can work with this person. Are they going to work with him now?
Well, maybe the presidency cannot, but their parliament...
How does the legislature work without the executive? The president stated categorically, mean to me.
So this is it. This is from the NPP's constitution, okay? Whenever a member ceases to be a member through resignation, expulsion from the party, or forfeiture of membership, which is what happened to the Fomena MP, the person may reapply for membership of the party, and the person may be readmitted on conditions provided in the constitution, except where the National Executive Committee decides otherwise. So I was thinking, maybe we should put the question to the National Executive Committee, because they could decide, oh, we want to have you back, instead of reapply to be admitted. You get what I mean? Because he's not a member of the NPP.
But this wouldn't be the first time that a member of Parliament, even within the NPP, Joe Wise himself, I mean, there have been instances in the past where they've gone and come back, and now they are bigwigs within the party and in Parliament. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I think we should just be a bit careful with the sort of rhetoric. When I listened back then to the president being so emphatic, I was sitting back and wondering, of all these independents, my guy, if I say one of them go and Kaneke, the Fomena MP is in pole position to ruin a lot of things. I mean, can you just imagine though, if he decided, let's assume that somehow it ends up, because there's one seat still being contested, Senate seat. Let's just say, for these purposes, that it becomes 137. And this guy decides, because for Parliament, there must be, that's why it's an odd number. There must be a majority and a minority. Let's assume he decides to go the way of the NDC.
Oh,
I'm just hypothetically. Do you know what that would mean, what it would do?
He would never ever do that.
I know his own people in Fomena have said that they voted for him, but they want him to remain with the NPP.
Yeah, because he even said to Joseph Opoku Gakpo that I will win it for the NPP.
Exactly.
I mean, he's a proper...
I feel even if he wanted to do otherwise, it would be a betrayal of the people who voted for him. In a way, because when you listen to them, at least right here, what they told us on Joy News, they want him to go back to the party. But they just wanted to make a point, and they made that point.
Oseche Mensah should not be saying no comment to that question. He was in leadership, when the speaker was sent that letter for them to get him out of Parliament.
He was one of the proponents. I mean, I don't know. What is this? He was in leadership.
Okay,
they did the thing.
So that's what I want to say. What can I maybe just say? So he shouldn't be saying no comments.
That's what happens when you have egg on your face.
This is sweet. I think like one of the sweetest things that have come out of this 2020 December 7 is this whole formula. You know, when you're doing things, Charlie, be careful what you do.
Watch it. The Daily Guide this morning, NDC gurus threaten police. We know where your families are. It's on the back of that case I spoke of initially with that Power FM presenter. Of course, a bit of an exchange between the lawyers and the police. NPP leads NDC in Parliament with 1 seat. NPP makes massive gains in Northern Region. And then NDC withdraws Techiman South case. Now, I found this interesting because in all the other papers, they talk of the fact that there are processes. The EC even has said that they should go to court. But here, the Daily Guide is suggesting that Christopher Bayre, the NDC's candidate in that Techiman South Bono East Region contest, has decided to withdraw the case. Well, I guess in coming days, we'll find out what exactly the facts are of that matter. Okay.
We've got some interesting stories on myjoyonline.com. If there's any story you want to highlight in any of the papers, Ben, before we do myjoyonline.com.
Maybe before I check out a few trends, and of course, you check out My Joy Online. Maybe you'll do that before I check out the trends. Let's also mention that Dr. Eben Chambers has been in the news quite a bit. He's he's been calling for the two sides. Recently, he's been referencing the peace pact signed between the NDC and the MPP, and he's calling for them to to bring an end to the standoffs and demonstrations. But we have quite a number of demonstrations coming up from the NDC's end with different names in different places.
So
Ashanti region.
Yeah. So just on this story, if we go to myjoyonline.com, which we're going to go in a little bit, you find this. NDC has no right to compromise the peace in Ghana. That's from Most Reverend Emmanuel Asante, and I'll read a bit of it. It says, immediate past chairman of the National Peace Council, Most Reverend Emmanuel Asante, says the National Democratic Congress cannot be allowed to compromise the peace Ghana currently enjoys. According to him, the NDC must appreciate the importance of the 42 days set aside for election petition to seek redress in court and not on the streets of Ghana. Here's a quote. Former President Mahama and the NDC are saying they will not accept the result of the election. There is nothing wrong with that. They have every right to express their views, but they do not have the right to compromise the peace of this country in expressing their views. If they feel strongly that they have been given a raw deal, they should rather take the legal path to seek redress. That's the Most Reverend Emmanuel Asante saying that. There's more to that story. Just go to myjoyonline.com. Let's see if we can just go quickly through the rest of the stories on our page on myjoyonline.com. There's this other one. Composition of next parliament is God sent, according to Franklin Kujo, president of Imani Africa. And then limiting political parties during election petitions enhances speed of trial. Law lecturer Srem Sai, as he appeared on the law. And then Constitution permits EC to alter election verdicts, according to Ben Abdallah Banda, one MP who's not going back to the 8th Parliament, not because he lost the 2020 elections. He actually didn't even make it. He lost the primaries. But here's what he says. He's a member of Parliament for Offenso North, and he says that the Constitution of Ghana permits the Electoral Commission to alter an election verdict if need be. Speaking to Joy News, Mr. Ben Abdallah dismissed claims that it's unlawful for the EC to amend election results. We're all working with CI 127, which says that declaration must be done by the chairperson of the EC, but it doesn't forbid the EC if she has honestly detected an error and comes back to correct it. That was a quote from that interview by Ben Abdallah, on myjoyonline.com. There are plenty of stories that you can explore. Ben, are you ready with the trends?
I am. Okay. I will actually do just something tied to the coronavirus on the BBC, but you can wrap up on that. I believe we have some 2 minutes.
Oh, I was going to go to the BBC actually. Right. There's an update. Remember yesterday I shared a Nigeria kidnapping story? Yes. So the Islamic group is saying something. I wanted to share details of that.
And supposedly, one of the papers today, apparently those who committed the act have been surrounded. There was a story like that somewhere.
Okay, so let me just...
The Ghanaian Times, or one of the papers. Yes, Nigeria gunmen who seized children surrounded.
Okay.
Parents are anxiously waiting at the school for news about their children. The story says the Nigerian government troops have surrounded the area where gunmen are believed to be holding school children hostage in northwestern Katsina.
Okay, so this unfolded yesterday in the course of yesterday, but this angle is Boko Haram, which has said that it was behind the kidnapping of the hundreds of schoolboys in Nigeria's northwestern Katsina state, hinting the group's continued expansive and deadly reach in recent weeks. And this is the Daily Nigerian website reporting. So at least hundreds of schoolboys at the government science secondary school, Kankara in Katsina state, are still missing in the wake of the Friday night attack. And according to Daily Nigeria, Boko Haram leader Abubakar Sheko said in a 4-minute audio message that his group carried out the attack because Western education is against the tenets of Islam. So
you know that's what Boko Haram actually means, right? Anyway, but interestingly, they use a lot of Western stuff, but they,
they're against
even
Western
the ammunition
education.
they use is made in the West.
The irony of it, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, the BBC, what I'll focus on, new variant of the coronavirus identified in England. It appears that's one bit about dealing with the coronavirus. It keeps mutating and maybe not as quickly, but that's part of why we've struggled with a virus like, HIV, actually, because of the mutations and all of that. But Biden, after win formalized, time to turn the page. Let me just
Mr. Trump still not conceding. Many believe that he will not concede.
I doubt he ever would. Inusaf Husseini is, and today I can say for all the wrong reasons, is trending at number 10 on Twitter. I don't want to repeat what he said.
But he backtracked. In that interview with Daniel.
Oh yeah, he said it was his opinion and all of that. But I feel what he said back then was in bad taste, though he was referencing Edu Buahin back then, but it was in bad taste. May Allah is trending at number 7, and you should see some of the tweets. You know why it's trending? People fit in, someone has died, may Allah take care of his soul and all of that. May Allah is trending at number 7. And at number 1, I just want us to take a look at this. Xavi, the former footballer with Barcelona, is trending at number 1, and I'll tell you why. Once a wise man said, when you're watching the game, you don't find Xavi, but if you watch Xavi play, you will see the whole game. Ballon d'Or dream. I mean, lots of tweets about him. This final one I'll do. Bloody hell. Okay, so bloody something. This looks like Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, except it's Xavi's Al Sadd in Qatar. He's also been taking up some managerial posts, and they're saying that this guy is amazing on the pitch and as a manager. So he's at number 1 on the transaction. All
right, so now you know what's trending, you know what's in the newspapers. If you find any of the stories interesting, just go to the newsstands and grab. Go to myjournline.com and read plenty of stories. I want to say good morning to the MC for Wejagbawe Municipal Assembly, Patrick Kwesi Brako Kumo. Very good morning to you, and thanks for watching the show. Stay with us. Sports is right after this.
Hello, good morning and welcome to the AM Sports with me, Yuri Kuampufu. Well, there has been a big trending story from yesterday, and it has to do with the intersection of education and sport. Now, it's about Martha Bisa, who formed part of a contingent of athletes from Ghana for the Summer Youth Olympics in 2014. Now, she has completed her degree at the Norfolk State University in the United States of America over the weekend. And she completed the 4-year-long course with a Bachelor of Science majoring in management. During her time at the university, she was named Female Athlete of the Year for 2 consecutive years in 2018 and 2019. And we have a pleasure of talking to her on Zoom this morning. And it's a pleasure to have you here, Martha. First of all, congratulations to you. But can you sum up the 4-year experience? We know that you were extremely good with your running throughout school. 4 years, how has that been for you?
Good morning, and thank you for congratulating me. Yeah, a 4-year journey wasn't easy, but about determination and focus, I was able to achieve that. When talking about the achievement and the process and everything, it's been a long journey. And trust me, when anybody listening or watching me know how it feels like when you combine athletics with a track. Classroom with athletics is very difficult because you need to adjust to both sides because you cannot pass your classes without not performing. So you have to do both. So it was a difficult task, but as I said, you need to determine and then you have to focus. So that's what I did all these years, and now this is the outcome of it.
Certainly, this is the outcome, but let's now look forward now. You're done with school, you are running whilst in school now. Now that you've completed with your bachelor's, what's the next step for you? Are you still looking to continue your running?
Yeah, I'm still continuing to run because I always say I am born to run. So I love running, so I'm definitely going to put like 95% of my time and my effort on a track. And then continue my education too. So I'm still going to run.
You mentioned continuing your education. Is it going for a PhD, or you've not settled yet on what type of education you're pursuing yet?
Honestly, I have thought about it, and because this is my first degree in business management, and then I have a second degree coming up on the spring, which will be marketing. So after that, I was thinking of going to do my master's in cybersecurity, but that will not be my top priority right now. But now, the 95% of my time will focus on the track.
That certainly is good news, but it leaves a lot of questions hanging, Martha. When you say you are going back to running, does that mean that you're coming back to Ghana to run for Ghana, or there's a possibility of you staying in the States and running there?
I'm a Ghanaian, and I'll always be a Ghanaian. No matter where I am a Ghanaian. So if I say I'm going to come back and run, I'm still running. I'm training. Whatever that comes on, I'll be there. Anything that happens, I'll be running for Ghana. But any decision that comes, I'll still be there. So it's 50-50. Anything can happen, positively.
Yeah, anything can happen, and that's because of, there's a little issue that you have with the GAA. What's the latest with that? Has that been sorted out?
Talking about the GAA, it stayed the same. Nothing has changed. Okay, I don't even think about the GAA because they are the GAA and Matabisa. So I have nothing to think about GAA. It's a past. They always be my past.
So what are your plans now, with the whole, you're separating yourself from the GAA. Is there a possibility that the two of you would come to a consensus and see you represent Ghana? Because that's what you truly stand for, according to what you are saying.
I have never separated myself from the GAA. They don't want me to be part of the association. The association is not for them, it's for Ghana. Because if anybody go out and run, they run under the flag of Ghana. And you see how proud the people are when they stand on the track to run under the flag of Ghana. So I don't think there's no separation from me. And they made it look like that, but I don't have any issue with the GA. They might have the issue with me, but which I don't really care much about that.
All right. Thank you so much, Martha, especially for staying up early. We know that it's really early there. It's probably dawn in the United States. And once again, a big congratulations. And thank you for your time again.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for people that are watching me and people that always be my fan. I thank Mr. Electoral for all this hard work and him and Kokun Makon put together. I appreciate you all media for celebrating me. Thank you all.
All right. So that was Martha Bisa, and during the 2014 Youth Summer Olympics, she won gold in the girls' 800 meters race. Now, that was Ghana's first Olympic gold medal at any international event. But let's do some more sports stories now. And the Black Satellites would be taking on Niger in the first of two semi-final games in the WAFU Under-20 Cup of Nations tournament. The Satellites started the competition on a good note, beating Nigeria by 1-0 to qualify for the semi-finals, only to lose by the same goal margin to the Ivory Coast in their second game. Ahead of their clash, assistant coach Augustin Adote has been speaking on the approach likely to be deployed, the defeat to Ivory Coast and the return of Precious Boa. My colleague Muftar Nabula has more in the following report.
The Satellites had a performance against Cote d'Ivoire, many described as uninspiring. Despite opening their competition with a 1-0 victory over Nigeria, many Ghanaians believed the performance of the team against Cote d'Ivoire does not present any hope as the country seeks to qualify for the U20 World Cup. Assistant coach of the team, Augustin Adote, previewing the semi-final fixture against Niger on Tuesday, called on Ghanaians to be patient with the team.
Messages came to us, the coaching staff, that we didn't play well against Nigeria, that we won 1-0. And coming to the Cote d'Ivoire game, now some of the spectators, even including management here with us, are applauding us. We played so well, but unfortunately, we lost. And sometimes we need to psych ourselves. Nigeria want to qualify. Cote d'Ivoire wanted to qualify as well. We had qualified already after beating Nigeria. We booked our ticket already. So it was left to us to decide the fate of Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria. And unfortunately, Cote d'Ivoire made a great mark. By then, we have also rested 4 or 5 players in readiness for the upcoming semi-final. So Ghanaians sometimes will have to understand, not that we went in as a weaker side. We did our best, but unfortunately, we lost at the end.
The last time Abdul Karim Zito headed a youth national team to a tournament was in Niger in 2018. The then U17 head coach failed to qualify the team to the Under-17 African Youth Championship. Tomorrow's game presents an opportunity for Zito and his team to right the wrongs of 2018. Adote says the players must die for the country to prove the critics of the national team wrong.
Proving our critics wrong and making us the coaches proud will mean the players will have to die on the field of play for nation Ghana. The other time when we played against Nigeria, recess, the president entered. He came and shook the dress room. He came and shook the dress room.
Well, Ghana would be playing Niger in that tournament today, and we're bringing you updates on that across our sports shows live here on Joy News. But let's now do some European news, where yesterday we did see the Champions League draw, and let's take a look at the fixtures. It was really a theme of reunions with Rafinha and Neymar returning for PSG. This time, they will not be playing for Barcelona. Then we have Diego Costa with Atletico Madrid also returning to the Stamford Bridge. For Liverpool, Naby Keita returns to Leipzig. And we see the remainder of the fixtures there. Certainly, PSG Barcelona would have to be the top liner there, closely followed by Atletico Madrid and then Chelsea. But there's also concern, and that has to do with the Europa League. It's not always about the Champions League. You remember teams like Manchester United dropped down to the round of 32 fixtures, and these are some of the games to look out for. Lille versus Ajax, who dropped from the Champions League, certainly is one to keep an eye on. Wolfsburg then play Tottenham Hotspur. Manchester United will be facing Sociedad, and then Leicester City, play against Slavia Praha.
Well, thank you for staying with us here on the AM show. Let's get into our big issues. Well, one of the conversations today, pretty much, it's about peace and security. There's been many comments based on the NDC's position of not accepting the 2020 presidential parliamentary results. Well, if you look at my jawline this morning, and as we reviewed the newspapers for you and we touched base on myjawline.com, you noticed that we shared with you a statement by the former Peace Council Chair, Most Reverend Emmanuel Asante, who says that the NDC has no right to compromise the peace in Ghana. Let's engage the Executive Director of the West Africa Network for Peace Building, Mr. Chukwuemeka Eze, A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time here on the AM Show on Joy News.
Morning.
Great.
Thank you for having.
Great. So I just want to take you back to the December 7 elections and some of the violence that we recorded. But sadly, we've recorded 5 deaths and 17 injuries. And this was communicated to us, confirmed by the election task force. What do you make of the kind of violence that we've recorded in this election that initially many said was peaceful and orderly?
Well, I think those who said it was generally peaceful are correct. These isolated cases are rather unfortunate. And of course, that also has implication for the long-standing credibility of Ghanaian elections and democracy in general. But I think that's something that post this election, all of us who are stakeholders in not just the electoral processes, but also in the peace and stability of Ghana, will sit down and reflect on the things that could have been done much, much better. And I'm sure that both the election management body, the security task force, those of us in the civil society, the Peace Council, all other stakeholders, I'm sure are also planning to take some kind of reflections and also use that to improve on what needs to happen, beginning from now to the next election. But I think that those instances that are isolated are very unfortunate, and I also join other well-meaning Ghanaians to ask for the rest of their beautiful souls and to acknowledge that they actually died patriots.
Would you still say these are isolated incidents when we've recorded 5 deaths?
Well, if you look at the population, I think it depends on your definition of isolated cases. If you look at the population of Ghana and the size of Ghana, and you also compare that with what happens generally in elections across our region and continent, well, I think it's safe to say they're isolated. But again, that does not mean that the death of one Ghanaian is acceptable. It is unacceptable. Not in any issue least talk about elections that are supposed to give them the opportunity to either renew or change the mandate that they've given to politicians. That's not acceptable.
What difference would an effective prosecution of those who committed these crimes, what would it do, especially looking at where we are?
It is extremely important. It also adds or removes credibility in the administration. It is important to give, because it gives confidence to the electorate and the citizens that impunity cannot be allowed to thrive, and that if you kill under any guise and without due process, then you have to answer for it. Whether it is the security agents or citizens killing one another, I think it's important to find the cure and also find redress in a court of law and bring those who are the perpetrators to book, and also reassure not just the victim's family, but also other citizens that we don't live in Banana Republic where you can do anything and get away with it. It is very important.
There are many calling on the NDC to seek redress in court, but indeed, if you speak to the NDC, they would also tell you that the protests, the many ways that they are also seeking to express their disappointment with the results of the 2020 elections are also legitimate. I mean, it's their legal rights. You can protest. You can go in a march like they've been doing. And so the court is not the only place where they can absolutely resolve their issues. As a security person, and as you've been analyzing a lot of security matters, particularly this one linked with elections directly, what do you make of the fact that what they're doing is also legitimately right?
I think it's important to, first of all, acknowledge that it is within the rights of NDC to have peaceful protests. It is also important to acknowledge that when they feel that they are hurt, they need to be allowed to express themselves in the most peaceful manner that they can. However, it is also important that NDC also begin to appreciate what is at stake at the moment. Those protests within the context of a global pandemic, within the context of already charged environment, how do they resolve the issues at hand? Or will they need to sit down and reflect whether the protests at the end of the day will yield the results that they seek for and also enthrone peace in the country they love so much and actually wanted to govern. So that's a way to balance it, but to obviously acknowledge that it is within their rights to express themselves in a manner that they feel they will be heard. If they feel that they have not been fairly treated in an election, it is within their rights.
What's been the experience on the continent? Can we still follow through with peaceful marches and protests in resolving this matter?
Well, again, at the end of the day, because I'm a professional mediator, at the end of the day, I'll go for sitting around the table. And also to acknowledge that people should also appreciate that within the continuum of dispute resolution mechanisms, that the court system is part of it. Also, other alternative mechanisms are also part of it. And I'm sure that we have very credible, very independent minds that can engage all parties, all sides, and find lasting solution to this. I think the most important thing is that the NDC want to be heard. But I also think that the other thing to acknowledge is that it looks to me like the MPP or the government in power is also ready to listen. And once this is established, then it makes even the mediation much, much easier. The other thing is to also establish the parameters under which such dialogue will take place. And more importantly, to assure all parties of the credibility of the process, whether it is the court system they are using, what are the fears that they expressed about not using the courts? If it is the good offices of some of this independent mind that I've talked about, how are they assured, all parties are assured of the credibility of the process and also the ability to implement the outcome? I think if you look at some of these fears that have been expressed, they have to do with distrust, and some of those elements are not things that we can ignore. There needs to be a process of reassuring all parties on both sides about the credibility of the process.
Mr. Chukwuemeka, as many have applauded the Ghana Police Service, indeed the security service, for a good job so far, because even on the day of declaration, we saw that NDC members massed up at the Electoral Commission head office. They were at their headquarters as well as in the NDC headquarters. And then in the aftermath of the declaration, we've seen them also marching on the streets. Just Sunday, through one of those marches, there were some arrests. And we're now even beginning to highlight on that. So if you look at the Daily Graphic newspaper of today on the back page, it says police arrest 5 for rioting, burning lorry tires on streets, and it's linked to the protests. But largely, many have said that the police has handled this really well. My question is, for how long do you think they can hold this together so that it does not degenerate?
My opinion is that while we continue to appreciate the police for what they are doing, because it is their duty to maintain law and order, while it is within the right of NDC to protest, it is also within the right of other citizens to also go about their daily businesses without fear of molestation. But beyond that, I think it's important that spaces are created to assuage the fears of NDC. It is important that spaces are created to hear them out. It is also important that whatever they consider to be their misgivings about using other means other than the protest should be listened to and also, in my opinion, addressed. Not just because of today, but because of future processes. It is important that political actors have faith in the institutions of the states that is available for redress. And where they do not trust those institutions of the states, they must have a means of being allowed to express why they do not trust those institutions, and clarifications are given. That's how institutions and states is governed and also operated, in my opinion.
If you listen to the leadership of the NDC and throughout their public commentary on not accepting the results of the 2020 elections, they haven't directly said that what their supporters are doing, they haven't directly called them off the streets. Their supporters have been expressing their disappointment, and they seem to agree with them. My question is, what's the role of leadership in this regard? What's the essence of we not hearing anything directly from the NDC leadership to their supporters?
I think, again, we need to appreciate that elections are conducted within an atmosphere of charged emotions. And when people feel aggrieved about the processes of an election, there is little or if at all, anything that the leadership of NDC can do beyond asking for peaceful means of expression. Okay? Not expressing themselves at all is not an option. Okay? But again, it may also not be 100% correct to make the assumption that the leadership of NDC may not be speaking to their followership. You also will understand that no leader wants to appear to be weak before his or her followers. So it is within that constraint that I also sympathize with the leadership of NDC. But what I'm saying is that we need to move away from this emotional state that, in my opinion, is gradually supposed to be fading away, and now come to allowing reasoning. And what does reasoning do? Reasoning also enables you to reflect on the process so far and to ask yourself, is there another means? For now, or before now, it may be difficult to ask those questions because that's the natural instinct of human beings. I must be heard. Now that this emotion is fading away, how do we now engage at the level of reasoning?
Are the emotions fading away, as you put it?
I think it is gradually supposed to be fading away because this cannot be sustainable. And yet, clarifications need to be given where there are gray areas.
So, if you look at the comments that has come in, and again, my Line has been reporting on the former Peace Council chair. Maybe before I even come to that, what kind of role should state institutions be playing? And when I ask what role, and I'm talking about the Peace Council in particular, remember that they had made an initial attempt to speak to the NDC directly, where they say some youth had disrupted the meeting. In the process, some of the leadership that went there were traumatized. They were making a second attempt to engage the parties. But what specific roles and who should be playing what role exactly at this point?
I was part of that team that went to visit the NDC. And I think it will not be fair for me to discuss, within the ethics of mediation, it will not be fair for me to discuss what transpired at that meeting. However, I think that the National Peace Council has the mandate, backed by an act of parliament, to facilitate a peaceful resolution of disputes in Ghana. And I think, and I know, that that's exactly what they have been doing. They may not be seen publicly making pronouncements or saying certain things, but I can assure you, as one of the technical partners to National Peace Council, that they are not sleeping at all. Behind the scene actions that are taking place will soon begin to yield results, in my opinion.
The NDC...
It is about It is about the planning process. It is about the engagement process. But to also acknowledge that these are not things that you just wish away in a day or two. It is a process, and that's why it is called peace building, so it is a continuous process.
I acknowledge that, except that the NDC had raised a lot of issues even before the declaration. And I'm just wondering, where was the National Peace Council? Couldn't the conversations have started way before the declaration?
We also need to acknowledge, the first thing is that it may not be correct to say that the National Peace Council were not engaging before the declaration. They did. I can assure you that. Again,
so did it fail then? Did it fail?
It depends on what you mean by failure. What do you mean by failure? I said it's a process. It is a process, and does not take a linear progression. It is something that you can achieve results today, and tomorrow we are talking about human behavior. And again, I want to reiterate that the ethics of mediation does not allow a mediator to expose the outcome of the discussions. But I can assure you, all I can say at the moment is that things were ongoing before the declaration of the results. Things continued, and things will continue.
How long would it take for us to resolve this if there is no court action?
How long also means that I have control over people's emotion and reasoning, and our duty as mediators is always to provide an enabling environment for people to express themselves. And because we are dealing with human science, it is difficult to predict. However, are there progress that have been made? Yes. What would have happened if nothing was being done at all? That's the question people are not asking. So the fact that you are able to be at work today, if you compare that with what happened in the past in Kenya, or even like Cote d'Ivoire, very close to you, you will understand that and appreciate that things are actually going on. And people are actually circumspect, and both NDC and other political parties are also patriotic citizens. And that's why we are where we are at the moment.
Would a court action help speed up a mediation process?
The court system is part and parcel of the continuum of dispute resolution. So if the parties in disputes feel that the court will give them the needed result, why not? It is important to test some of the allegations in a court system, because what it does is also that it enriches the democratic ethos. It also enriches the process of democracy. And through that court system, even if nobody wins or somebody loses, there are lessons to be learned that will help in enriching the electoral process in Ghana. Why not?
So a multiple means of resolution, including a court system, could be happening at the same time?
Yeah, for me, anything that is legitimate and that entrenches peace is allowed. Why not? The court system is part of what the Electoral Act approved as a means of resolving disputes. IPAC is part of the platform that is provided. So anyone that parties feel will give them the needed results, why not?
Yesterday, Parliament reconvened after the break, making way for the elections. And we saw the minority in Parliament saying that they were mourning the collapse of democracy. If this continues, in terms of Parliament also picking up and starting something on its own, then where would it leave us?
Again, you cannot isolate the way and manner NDC is expressing themselves. I think this is holistic in manner. So that is not expected that the Parliament can come up with their own way of expressing themselves. So once we begin to resolve the fundamental issues, all those things definitely will fizzle out. So I don't expect them to continue in isolation.
Well, Chukwuemeka, maybe finally I should just ask you, sometimes it's very difficult when we are reporting on these matters because we report when it happens. And you'll have some of these players speak to you and propagate, their own positions on these matters. How can we be cautious so that we're not adding to an already complicated situation?
I sympathize with the media, honestly, because you provide a platform through which people are heard. some of the things people say, you don't have control over them. But again, to also acknowledge that each time people are on your platform, so long as they are not raising issues that passes the test of peace and stability, then it is time to cut them off and also to caution them. This is not the time to begin to stoke the words that could further be divisive in nature. I think the platform should be given to people who are more reconciliatory in their tone. However, to also not over bottle people and refuse to give them platform to express themselves, because expression then takes a different form if they are not in words. So it is about how to balance this and how the media also continuously preach that which will entrench peace in an already charged environment.
Well, Chukwuemeka Eze, I thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you for the conversation.
Anytime.
All right, that's the Executive Director of the West African Network for Peace Building, Chukwuemeka Eze, on this. This is still very fresh. This is still very much developing. The position that the NDC has taken in terms of not accepting the result of the 2020 elections. Yesterday, the Electoral Commission issued a statement on the parliamentary results. So as it stands now, we know that the NPP has 137. That is not a majority or a clear majority in parliament. And the NDC has 136 with one independent candidate. There's one outstanding case. And the Electoral Commission is directing all aggrieved persons to resort to court in order to deal with the matters coming out of the parliamentary elections. Well, my colleague Emmanuel Ante has been to Medina and Adenta to speak to constituents for their reaction to the election. So we stay very much with election-related matters. Here's Emmanuel Ante's interaction.
The 2020 parliamentary elections sprang a lot of surprises on many Ghanaians, with a lot of big shots losing their seats to their opponents. Well, one of such constituencies is the Medina Abokobi constituency, where Alhaji Sadiq Boniface, who is a Minister of State at the Vice President's office, lost his seat to Francis Xavier Sasu. Alhaji Sadiq Boniface contested Alhaji Amadou Sorogo in the 2016 general elections. And let's see how much he got from that constituency or that elections. He had 40,283%, 40,283 votes out of the total vote cast, and that represented 54.90% of the total vote cast. And Alhaji Amadou Sorogo at the time also garnered 31,650, representing 43.13% of the total votes lost. Now, a fast track to 2020. Francis Xavier Sosu recorded 62,127, representing 56.58% of the total votes cast, whilst Alhaji Abubakar Sadiq Boniface recorded 46,985 votes, representing 42.79%. Now, the question one may ask is, why this sharp decline for the NPP? Well, let's speak to the constituents to see or to get to know why or what informed their decision.
Yes, Alhaji, onye juma, ene change no, ene buy, ente second, we no so onye juma bia, can say body fees, also onye juma bia, ene say ye di we no buy, so su, ene di buy, say on be ye juma mai. But the one year you might be an pan bed, or bet me a fro. Want to mean fro? What I said? Want to mean fro? They said Juma win no, yeah, no. We hear Juma papa, dear no obey. We be fro say be Juma mano. Ain't I head and ace son.
I Boniface 2 or more to Tiano. Eh, was Obiama complainer also on your baby as woman or deco. If you cry, you block down by almost say Adriani be obeying your young woman or defa. Adriani be obeying your zongum. In fact, trepo zongum or defa. And now the Boniface, yes, and Obi on my own tiasia. But me a fabi me meeting as here. Because I now just obey Winnie Zongo for Akuma. Every and this the Abakan people for me. And I said, baby, I will win, and or Pasanka will win his own phone, and one back. But why, Yanisa, and ye, on to me, Yanisa, and Yanni Penny, I dream about Cobem Crum. Nanka says, baby, I will win majority vote, and also Uncle, or Gina, and or Mumu. But why, Yanisa, especially Madina has say, Boniface, Luciano. Sabi seat in the union say a NDC 4 seats. Now Sologo, Brebia last 4 years, maybe a name Koyi in Tamabutu. The 202 now Boniface bar, Naka, maybe rest like a Boniface bar, or better the loose side of the Sologo here now, or the Luciano, not cutting build the honor. But I come here so by and I say, power when the January, I didn't know, shut down more, and also a yes, obey any day. It's a basana, so far as I will sit. Now we money pana be no wadi atunu no. So also be the same mistake and I say obvious send the TV no 4 years in this one e be 12 so. Intermediate so Boniface 202 no and share den nyame hu ka bebre sa because seat ni nya MPP seat NDC seat. Now so logo ni ye bibia enye se oye and wadi atunu ti ko ba no ka so no go back to the people grassroots no be some the reason nema e course ma as so logo ye ya anko yi ntema wodi gina so ye den etu no. But I mean, I come here say ono so anya ne sa. They be no company say oye the aircon type. They be who no care. I say they be office. But the human the background. Na ni nipa na kasa, ni nipa ne hu sampa, oni pe wo kan ye ho. Ya ma ne ye na ma ne ye how ye ne how. Enti see etu na en shede ha me na mum ya na ya say MPP team lose say.
To give you a summary of all that they have said. The first person spoke about the fact that Alhaji Sadiq Boniface promised to work for them because Alhaji Amadu Sorogo, when he was in power in 2016, did not work for them. So he promised to work for them, but after gaining the power, or after getting the power, he forgot all about them. And that's why they voted against him. The other person, the other lady also said that Alhaji Sadiq Boniface concentrated on the Zongos, thinking he was going to win the Zongos to his strongholds, but that also backfired. The last person also spoke at the fact that he failed to learn from his predecessor. And so he continued to make the same mistakes Amadu Sorogo made. And that's why that seat reverted back to the NDC. Now, let's move to the Adentan constituency to hear their reasons for voting their candidates out.
The reason why we voted for Abu Ramadan is, like, he loves human beings. You see, he spends a lot on us. Like he did the, how do you call it, the Lakeside Bridge. He did it. And he didn't wait for him to be in power before he does what he does for us. You can see this structure here. He did it. So we can see he's very close to us. We've been seeing him often. He's very close to us, even when he wasn't an MP. And he spends a lot. That's why we voted for him, because we think it is his time.
The reason I'm for 2-tier parliamentary money say a lot of them now don't control free education. Meanwhile, I know parliamentary was say be a free education. It's me who say I know come more and I'm for 2-tier because say also free education I say she koso I how no ma I dance so I know which me say onya hwe me say me to skirt and blouse me to my sitting president. Na metuma friends and NDC parliamentary candidates. Into son of me say in the next 4 years, 8 years coming. I said, son, say, Obana say, Onya, no matter so MPP and I say, you flee home.
Yen station here particular. A trap at a year, Wahaya, a year Ramadan, never yes, up at a year. Because I'm say, why be buy or buy. Ubebisa say mwaben na station ne yepe and almost say omo pe pata fine ope pata wo so kwaba ye hu bi ba Ramadan oba na wo kan asem na pe ho na kpakpakpa de be chia no wa be ye estimate kpakpakpa omo abebo we no omo de esi wo nti nipa bia wutu anamo a ese ade na wo be hu se oye no oye o mechi tafu bi wa ha see nti na this time no MPP parliamentary no akoye say about to nikoye skate and brass.
Well, you heard them. You heard what they have to say. Now, let me first do a summary of those who spoke in the local dialect said. According to one of them, he says that Yabo Abian Samoa was rather focusing on the free education that the president brought about. And that was not his achievement to tout. Well, the other person also says that Abu Ramadan, who contested him, I should say, rather focused on the people. He came to them, even when he is not an MP yet, he focused on giving them what they needed. He built a lot of things for them, bridges and sheds and all that. So they focused on that. They used that to vote against Yabuabian Samoa. That's it. And this is not the only place that we have these conversations going on. And this is not the only place that people are giving these excuses, that the MPs neglected them. Well, this is your choice to make. Emmanuel Ayante, Joy News.
Why don't we listen to the Member of Parliament for Adenta, a man who's been kicked out. He will not be in the 8th Parliament. Here's Yabuabing Asamoah.
I could have avoided the personal part of it, but propaganda being what it is, a rumor being what it is. I was actually in the hospital a full week before the election. Wow. I was in the hospital whilst conducting my election, and I was let out by the hospital authorities on sufferance for just about almost 12 hours to come and try and work on the election. But I was in the hospital for nearly a full week before the election started.
It's got nothing to do with the results?
Absolutely nothing. No, you can win or lose. I have lost several elections, don't forget. I have lost several elections before. The only difference is that this time I had it and I have lost it. Before I was looking for it and I didn't get it. So I'm comfortable in my skin. I am comfortable and I believe that one can win or lose. And as I stand here, don't forget, I'm still Director of Communications and my mouth is still hard.
He says his mouth is still hard, and he's still Director of Communications for the NPP. So that's Yabuabing Asamoah there. Now, the Member of Parliament for Medina has also been sharing some few thoughts. So, you know, initially when he lost, he had said that he was going to go to court because he was alleging fraud. Well, here's the latest development. He says, and again, he's alleging overvoting, except that he's not going to resort to court. Because according to him, his agents looked on whilst overvoting happened in some places. So that's the latest with the Medina issue. Don't expect that there will be any court actions there. When we come back, as you still stay with us here on the AM show, we'll talk about the Ejumako DCU who was arrested for assaulting a police officer. And again, if you monitored our review, we played back the narration from the police in the central region, and they talked about how the DCE had marched some persons to the police station and assaulted this police officer and released a man who was in police custody. We'll get the very latest with our central regional correspondent, Richard Kwejonyako. We'll go to Parliament as well on day one as Parliament reconvened. Well, the NDC says that they are mourning democracy. We'll speak to our parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. That's all after this. Stay with us. All right, let's go to Parliament right away. My colleague, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, is joining us via Zoom for a conversation on day one, if you like, of Parliament, this last leg of it. Joseph, good morning to you. You were in black too yesterday, weren't you? Was there was there some kind of communication sent to all of you in Parliament to be mourning democracy, or this was just a minority business?
I wasn't in black, just for the record. Mama, you should go back to primary school and learn colors properly. I was in a blue-black attire. That's okay. Nothing close to black. Okay.
Yes, Honorable.
I was in a blue-black. So I wasn't mourning the death of democracy. I woke up yesterday morning. I had to step out of the house early. I didn't know the minority MPs had planned to wear black. I mentioned that on the AM show yesterday morning, but I got to know after I had left the house around 5 a.m. So please, for the record, I was wearing an attire similar to the color of yours.
No, don't mind my mischievous self, okay? But listen.
No, I know. You're not the only one who said it. So actually, this message is directed at other individuals than yourself.
Okay, don't say what you were wearing is close to what I'm wearing today, because there is a clear difference.
The value is the same. Blue, black are in the same neighborhood, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah.
So I got a call from Raphael Gabson, for example, yesterday, who is the NDC treasurer in the Bono East area. And he made a similar observation, and not just him and a few others. So they are the ones I'm talking to this morning.
Okay, so let's go back to how, was there like a grand entry to the chamber yesterday by the minority?
Not necessarily. So we all were expecting that sitting should have begun somewhere around 10 o'clock, which is the time that was advertised. Eventually, the House began sitting almost 1 p.m. And what we saw happening was the MPs coming in one after the other, wearing their black, particularly for those on the minority side. A lot of the majority MPs were in white. Even before sitting began, then they were, hanging around in the chamber in various groups, having conversations. And that's when we observed that a lot of them, particularly the minority MPs, were either in red and black attires, a batakari, which has both red and black stripes, or they are in, political suits that's mainly black top, black down. Some of them had red armbands on their hands. And just to, as you indicated, to mourn the death of democracy in the country. Eventually, in the course of the day, we had a conversation with some of the minority MPs led by Samuel Okujeto-Ablakwa, who addressed the media rights on the presence of parliament. And then we asked the questions, and that's when he offered the explanation that the reason why we're seeing them in black is them wanting to mourn the death of democracy in the country. And additionally, the concern that they had about those who have died as a result of the election. There are about 5 people or so who had been shot. They felt that there was the need to show some respect to them and to mourn them, which is why they were actually in black. So that's what we saw unfold in the House.
So just we've got the sound bites of Okujeto-Ablakwa. I want us to listen to him. We'll come back and continue this.
Struggling to have it. They need him so they can get to the magic number 138. We have 138 already. Techiman South belongs to us. Senate West belongs to us. We have won convincingly. Check the presidential result, over 6,000. And we've put out the margin of victory for the parliamentary. More than 1,000 votes. More than 1,000 human beings. We have won a majority, and that majority will not be stolen. Enough of using weapons, misusing the military to overturn results. We will not accept.
The black you are wearing today, what exactly are you trying to put out with that?
We are mourning the death of democracy in our country, the discredited election that the Electoral Commission has conducted, a confused Electoral Commission, a discredited Electoral Commission, clearly in cahoots with our opponents to rig the elections and to put out numbers that don't add up. That is what we are mourning. We are also mourning the use of violence in our election, the militarization of elections in this country. We are mourning the killing of 6 unarmed civilians who were only seeking to protect their votes. We are mourning the wanton abuse of state power to arm twist, force electoral officers to declare results in the favor of the ruling government. We are saying that we will not accept this despotic and tyrannic tendency, which is unknown in Ghana. I mean, Ghana has become such a beacon of democracy. Since 1992, we have been celebrated by many, many countries. And you have read all the Observer Mission reports. The European Union, the Commonwealth, ECOWAS, they have not minced words that this election has fallen short of the litmus test. It's not transparent. Collation has been a disaster. This is not free and fair elections. These elections has been conducted in fear. The collation has been done with brute force, seeking to overturn the verdict of the people. And we are saying that we stand in solidarity with our people, with the party. We are not going to accept these results, and we demand that justice prevails. That's why we are mourning the state of our democracy. We are mourning the end of credible elections in Ghana. We are mourning the use of brute force that has led to 6 unarmed civilians losing their lives. We are mourning the attempt to deny us of a majority in the 8th Parliament, which we have won fair and square. And we are sending clear notice that we will not accept this tyrannic and despotic conduct of the New Patriotic Party working in cahoot with Diajin Mensah appointed Electoral Commission. We will not accept it.
So Joseph, that's Okujoto Ablakwa, and you were engaging him, as he spoke to the media yesterday, explaining. So did this disrupt the process in Parliament at all? The fact that they were mourning the death of democracy?
No. So for them, it's more like the significance of it, the fact that they showed up in black. The processes went on. The speaker took his seat. Eventually, almost 1 p.m., he started with his opening address, urging MPs to be punctual, drawing their attention to the fact that there's a lot of business that needs to be done between now and when the House eventually takes its break, somewhere around the 22nd of December. And so his hope is that they'll show up as they ought to and be in the House in their numbers. Him congratulating those who have won elections this time around, going into the 8th Parliament, and wishing those who didn't win well. So the speaker said all of that, and then he gave the floor to the minority leader to also deliver his opening address. The minority leader focused on the issue with this particular just ended election, So he referenced the situation in Techiman. He said he had gone to see it himself. Some people were shot. They are looking for the pink sheet for that particular collation center that they still don't have. He felt that the EC had committed errors that that were not acceptable and which was endangering the nation's democracy. And in the course of that, he went on, and at a point in time there were more like interruptions from the majority side, seeking to draw his attention to the fact that what is expected of him is a welcome address as the House resumes sitting. So he shouldn't necessarily be focusing too much on all the other issues. And so he cut short his address and then gave the space to the majority leader, Sechi Mensah. And then he reacted to the minority leader's concerns. And he, for example, made an argument that the NDC has no business questioning the outcome of the elections as has been declared by the EC, because they don't even have the said pink sheets from all the areas. And it's now that they say they are doing an audit of those pink sheets. And, as he went on with that point, then the minority also started heckling him and asking him questions in the background, like who told him that they don't have the pink sheet? Who told him that they don't have the pink sheet? So all of that happened, and then eventually the majority leader delivered the business statement, which was the outline of work for the week. And then they went on to other business, including dealing with the insurance bill. So the business of the House went on as expected, without any interruption of any sort, regardless of these concerns that the minority was actually raising.
So are they wearing black throughout the rest of the 7th Parliament?
I saw that clarification, and that's the indication that I was given, that this is an action that is continuing at least until what they're demanding for is given them, which is that John Mahama won the election itself, and he should be declared president-elect, not Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And additionally, as Mr. Okujoto Ablakwa put it, they won 138 seats in Parliament, which gives them the majority without even the independent MP. And he mentioned the specific constituencies they are insisting they won, which is Techiman South, and he says the Senate West seat is going to them. So they say they will continue this protest, if you could call it so, until that victory is given them by the Electoral Commission.
Joseph, I know that you also engaged the majority leader. I want us to take a listen to him. We'll come back and digest some of the things that he's had to say.
Even an odd number parliament, it cannot be a hung parliament. There will always be a majority.
But if there's an independent, and it's 137, 137.
The independent will associate with one side or the other of the House. There are only two caucuses, majority, minority. Independent, by the construct of our parliament, will be required to work with one side or the other of the party, of the caucus. So there can't be a hung parliament in Ghana.
Is Andrew Kwesi joining your side of the House as the majority, the NPP side, from what you've gathered so far? Has the conversation with him happened yet?
He will decide.
But at least are you speaking to him, trying to get
an engagement by both sides.
No, my final question.
Don't lead me into temptation.
Maybe that negotiation is probably proving difficult already, is it? There are reports about some demands he's making on the party and all.
I don't know that. I don't know that.
And so in terms of working together, what can we expect at the level?
If you want to engage anybody, the person that you are seeking engagement with will have his or her own terms. Just that. So whoever is engaging, I believe he will raise issues about terms of engagement. That's it.
So Joseph, you were lucky. You got him to speak directly to the issue, because the Daily Graphic had tried and he had said no comment to the specific issue of the former MP. What did you do differently?
No, so he was walking into his office in the tunnel, and of course, when I started the conversation, he said he wasn't interested in on the issue. So I followed him up and kept asking the questions, and even in the course of the conversation, as you realized, he was giving short yes and no answers, not willing to give out much, and indicating that he doesn't actually want to be led into temptation at any point in time. But yes, he ended up backing something else we had heard already just about a day or two after the election, that apparently not just the majority, the current majority as in the NPP, but also the minority as in the NDC side has actually begun engaging or seeking to engage Andrew Kwesi so that then he joins even the NDC side of the House.
Joseph, let's backtrack a little bit. Tell us the role that Osei Mensah played in getting Mr. Esiama expelled from Parliament.
This was what happened. So Mr. Esiama said he wasn't contesting the Fomena seat. This was back in February this year because he felt the executives in the constituency were not working fairly enough. There was an NPP primary in that particular constituency. Someone else was elected as candidate. Mr. Siama later came to say he's going independent. When he announced he was going independent, the Ashanti regional branch of the NPP wrote a letter to the Speaker of Parliament, drawing his attention to the fact that Mr. Kwesi had actually been expelled from the NPP as a party because he had decided to go independent. In fact, a statement from the General Secretary, John Boedu, announced that all those who are going independent and their supporters were being expelled from the party, and Mr. Kwesi was one of them. Mr. Chimensa clarified in the course of the conversation that in terms of the request that had come from the NPP that Mr. Kwesi be expelled from Parliament because he's no longer a member of the NPP, which is actually what the Constitution says, that once you decide to leave the party that brought you to power, then your seat could be declared vacant. Mr. Osei Mensah to clarify that this was actually a request that was coming from the Ashanti regional branch of the party. The request went directly to the Speaker. After like a month, if my memory serves me right, on the floor of the House, the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, announced to MPs that this notification had come from the NPP, and he read portions of the Constitution and indicated that he had come to a decision that Mr. Kwesi seat is something that should be declared vacant and he should no longer hold on to it. So then that was done on the 6th of November, just before the House went on break. So in fact, on the day that was done, after the announcement was made by the Speaker, there was an attempted intervention by the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, and those on the majority side to seek to comment on this. The Speaker said what he brought to the House was in an announcement, and that the issue was not up for debate. This was not a decision that the entire House was taking, but then it was just he, the Speaker, who was taking the decision. But, sometimes in this case, the argument can be made that it was the Speaker's decision and not necessarily maybe the majority side of the House or even the minority side of the House or MPs in general. But of course, the Speaker couldn't have taken a decision like this without consulting the leadership, particularly on the majority side, and in this case, Osei Mensah.
Yeah, but Joseph, I remember this letter had been in Parliament for a while, and we had conversations on that. The majority didn't clearly state any position that was contrary to the content of this letter.
Exactly the case. Exactly the case. So everyone is clear in their minds that the decision that was taken by the Speaker to declare the Fomena seat vacant definitely had the backing of not just the national executives of the New Patriotic Party, which will obviously include the chairman, the general secretary and all, but then it also had the backing of the leadership on the side of the majority, including Osei Mensah, who is the majority leader, the chief whip, and the other leaders on the majority side. So you could rightly make the point that the stone that the current majority in Parliament rejected a few months ago is actually what has become the cornerstone going into the next Parliament, because you're looking at a situation where that individual, Amwako Siama, will decide very largely who holds the majority side going into the next Parliament. Obviously, because he's been expelled from Parliament, we don't see him in the House these days. But, you know, one thing that I should note is that I have had conversations with some MPs on the backbench who are legal practitioners and who are members of Parliament on the majority side. And to the extent that some of them were very firm in their mind, before the Speaker decided to declare the seat vacant, they were very firm in their mind that the Speaker had absolutely no basis to expel Mr. Siama from the House, and that they, to a certain extent, were backing Mr. Siama, except that, of course, because it's a party thing, then they, the backbenchers, would not have the authority and the audacity to step out there and kick against the decision or criticize the decision.
Yeah, true.
But to a very large extent, particularly the backbench, at least 3 or 4 MPs that I had spoken to who are lawyers felt there was no basis to expel Mr. Siama from the House, as had been requested by the NPP as a party.
But that's also understandable, Joseph, because the president himself had visited. There was a debate, there were chiefs, there were many people, and he made it very clear that he couldn't work with anybody who had gone independent. And he said he had tried to have conversations with him. He sort of understood him, only to turn his back. So nobody was going to speak against what the president had said, at least not publicly. But it's also intriguing that the NDC, knowing that even though this man is no longer, per their own constitution, a member of the NPP, it's interesting that the NDC is talking to him. He can never be a member of the NDC, can he?
You see, you don't necessarily have to be a member of the party eventually, as far as Parliament is concerned. I'm sure that's why the NDC still has some form of hope that they could woo him into their fold to a certain extent. It's just about him deciding that he wants to sit with the NDC going into the next Parliament and not necessarily joining the party. But, you know, the point is usually made that in politics, all we have are permanent interests and not exactly permanent friends. I'm just assuming, you know, right now the NDC is insisting that they actually hold the presidency, and even apart from Parliament. So they are operating on that basis that they possibly have a chance of not only forming government, but also holding the majority in Parliament. If that was the case, then they have some additional leverage to want to co-opt more people into their fold, you know, both in Parliament and probably in the executive arm if they end up having their way. I get the sense, even at their level, because you recall that the Fomena MP has repeatedly said that he was winning the Fomena seat going into the 8th Parliament for the NPP. So almost everyone is clear in their minds that he will join whatever the NPP side of the House will be. But in politics, you can't tell. It's still worth the try, and it's still worth attempting to woo him into their fold as far as the NDC is concerned. You may never know.
Listen, it's interesting, you know, witnessing what is playing out in Parliament these days, and we can't even wait for the 8th Parliament. So Parliament is back this morning. They sit at 10 a.m.
Parliament is back this morning from 10 a.m. They're trying to get a bill passed to govern the work of the insurance industry, you know, drawing the lines, laying out punitive measures for those who abuse their authority as far as the insurance industry is concerned. It's called the Insurance Bill. Yesterday, there was the second reading of the bill when the House debated the principles of that bill. So
we are expecting that they will continue work on it with the consideration stage and amending various portions of it. The House is also expected to deal with a number of other items, including the public-private partnership bill, which is a key thing that the House is expected to look at. We are still expecting that a document to be laid in the House recommending how much MPs should be paid as far as their Ace Gratia package is concerned, even as they exit the 7th Parliament. They will deal with that. All of that is expected to happen before the 22nd of December, and then they'll take a break for Christmas.
Okay.
And then sometime around the 2nd to the 5th of January, they'll resume sitting again. And that's when the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, will be expected to deliver his final State of the Nation address to this 7th Parliament before they will have their final sitting on the 6th of January. And then by midnight the 6th, we can assume that the 7th Parliament would have been dissolved automatically to make way for the 8th Parliament on the dawn of the 7th of January 2021.
Joseph, how many of the 273 members were in Parliament yesterday?
My count indicated a little over 100 of them, looking at both the majority and the minority side, were in the House yesterday. So we are expecting, and so the Speaker repeatedly made a point that he hopes that more MPs show up in the House to come help business, because these are very crucial days. But more importantly, just to highlight this very briefly, one of the reasons why a lot of MPs are being encouraged to show up in the House is that, you know, the House is reviewing what is described as the standing orders that guide how business in the House is done. A lot of changes are being made. It will most likely be a very contentious issue, looking at the fact that we're entering an almost split Parliament, because a lot of amendments are expected to be made to that particular standing order. So, for example, currently the various committees of the House has about 25 members, which is split along the ratio of the representation of majority and minority. We are expected to see a change to that. Now we would have committees of the House having just about between 8 and 11 members, and there will be a chairperson and either 8 or 12 other members. So the number when it comes to the committees is being, you know, brought down substantially. And there's a requirement that an MP should be part of only one committee in Parliament. So, for example, there are MPs who are part of 2 or 3 committees. Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, the Ofoasia Yerebi MP, for example, who is a Minister of Information, is, for example, currently a member of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee. He's additionally a member of the Finance Committee. So, you know, there's a lot for him to do, juggling along various committees. In the next Parliament, every single MP will be limited to a specific committee. I recall, I'm double checking that, but I recall that there was a proposition that when it comes to even the vetting of ministers should go to specific committees for the necessary vetting rather than an appointment committee of Parliament handling that.
Oh, that's...
yes, that was one of the propositions. I should be able to confirm that in the course of the day once we've double check the details of the new standing orders that the House is looking at, as to whether that will be the case going into the next one. But that was a key proposition, that we wouldn't have a whole appointment committee vetting all the 138 MPs. We would have all 128 ministers, as we had previously. We would have like the finance committee vetting the finance minister. We would have the security committee vetting the interior minister. We will double check whether that eventually found its way into the new standing order. But that review is happening, and that new document will also be approved.
Yeah, but that notwithstanding, Joseph, it's still very significant changes that they seek to do. So we will continue this conversation tomorrow, gather a lot more in Parliament today. And still watch out for the former MP.
Well, maybe he'll come around to pack his books or, you know, take something he's left in his office, and then we'll grab him and bring a conversation.
Okay, great. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, our Honorable, what are you wearing to Parliament today, by the way?
I think I'll wear something light brown. Something, you know, light brown. That looks nothing like black. That looks nothing like any of the colors of the various political parties. So it doesn't become an issue when we talk tomorrow morning.
I think you should just wear blue.
That can, to a certain extent, be misconstrued to be blue-black. depending on what the MPs will be wearing themselves in the course of the day today.
All right, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, whatever you choose to wear, good luck with it. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent.
Have a nice day as well, Mama.
All right, great. Helping us with how things pan out in Parliament yesterday. Very interesting. We'll take a quick breather. When we come back, Richard Kojanyako on the very latest with that DCE who stormed the police station in the Central Region, beat up a police officer according to the police own account, and released a person in custody. Stay with us. You're watching the AM show right now. We want to get the latest updates on the Ejumako DCE who was arrested for assaulting a police officer. My colleague Richard Kojanyako is our Central Regional correspondent. He first told us this story. He joins us via Zoom for more. Richard.
Hi, Mama V.
Yeah, hi. First of all, listen, good job for telling us about this story yesterday, because if you monitor the newspapers, not many of them are highlighting. The graphic also tells the story, but you would have thought that it would make front page headline because this is huge. But yesterday, the police also narrated exactly what had happened. Later on, there was an arrest and there was a bail. Share how it all unfolded.
Well, so there was a complainant in the Ejumako Ochiso community, and so the complaint was made to the Ejumako police, Ochiso police. So the victim here, or the complainant, was issued with a medical form, went to the hospital, and then the form was endorsed. Came back, and the police decided to effect the arrest of the suspect in this case. So in the police station, there was someone on a motorbike who came to the police station and then handed the phone to the policeman who was in charge at the police station at that time. And then he got on the phone and spoke with the person. The person on the other side, we are told, is the Jumako Enyanesiam constituency chair of the MPP. And then, according to the police man, that man decided to hurl insults at him. And so he got irritated and decided not to speak with the man again. So a few moments later, the DC drove to that particular police station in a company of about 8 people, we are told, by the police, and then gave the man some hefty slaps. We do not know the number of slaps that the DC is alleged to have given the policeman, and then ordered the men accompanying him to also subject the policeman to some beatings. After that, that did not end that. The suspect that was in police custody was freed, and so the DC, we are told, also took the suspect with him and then drove with him in his car, and then they left the police station. But before that happened, I think there had been a verbal altercation between the police and then the DC after the chairman has spoken with the police. And I think the policeman is alleged to have asked the DC who was he. And then I think that infuriated the DC, and then that really happened. But so, yesterday, I think the case also even happened on the 2nd of December. That is prior to the election. The regional minister was alerted about this because the police administration was not happy about it. The regional minister, I'm told, was very furious at the behavior of the DCE and said that the DCE did not show leadership in whatever had happened because he had no business driving from his residence or the office to the police station to do, even if it is found out that he did not even give the policeman some slaps. He went in the company of some people who did the job for him. And so on that score, he allowed them to take the DC through the processes, and then that led to the arrest and subsequent bail. Yesterday, when the police, the DC came to the police station, he was in the company of the mayor of Cape Coast. In fact, the mayor drove him to the police station, and then we are also even told by the police that he stood as surety for the.
So what was he charged with?
Yeah, he was charged with assault preliminary, but the other charges we are yet to know. In fact, he is still on police inquiry bail. He is still undergoing investigation. But what we do know is that the policeman in question has been transferred by the police administration from that particular district, because the man is still the DC of that area and he is the chairman of the District Security Council. If he is allowed to still work under that district, they do not know what would happen. And so the man has been transferred to an unknown district, a district that we would not want the general public to know, so that the policeman could and then do his work.
Okay, Richard, hold on. So if he was assaulted, was he asked to go to the hospital? Was he treated apart from him being transferred?
Yes, the policeman went to the hospital. In fact, when I saw him, he was in bandage. The waist was in bandage, the chest was in bandage, and then the head was in bandage. And we are also told that the medical report, according to the medical officer, in fact, he got lucky, otherwise the spine would have been affected. So that tells you the nature of the aggravation or the nature of the assault that was on the police officer.
Okay. So he's made a formal complaint, obviously. That's why the DCE was arrested and now he's on bail. They're still investigating. So we haven't even gone to court yet on this matter.
So the policeman from there did not make the complaint at the Ejumakon district, went to the divisional, the Mankesim Divisional Police Command, and then made the complaint. And subsequently, the case was transferred to the regional police headquarters. Thereon, the suspect in this case, that is the DCE, got arrested. He came, he wrote his statement and is under caution and has since been granted bail.
So what kind of administrative actions, if any, have been taken against this DCE? Is he still at post?
Yeah, he's still at post. Yesterday, the last interaction we had with the regional minister, he indicated that, well, he has personally rebuked him and would not know whether the letter has been written formally by the regional minister to the office of the chief of staff, the president, and then the appointing authorities. But the regional minister indicated that that was going to happen. So we do not know. In fact, the case happened, I think, barely about 2 weeks ago. And so we assume that something like that should happen or should be happening.
Well, but at least I guess because of the elections, they could give the excuse that there were other things of national importance that they were concentrating on. But we thank God that this is out now. Is the police giving any assurance that they're not going to give up on this matter because this is one of their own and it's absolutely important that they get justice for their colleague?
Well, the police is serious about this. What they say is that the morale of the people, the police personnel in the region, has gone down as a result of this. They say that this is not the first time an incident like that has happened. People do that and they go scot-free. They exhibit some kind of machoism. They boss everything on them. If someone is arrested and the person has some callous and the other things, they just place calls and then these people are left off the hook. But in this case, it wasn't like that. There was an assault and there was a freeing of a suspect in this particular case, and that makes it very, very grave. And so they are not taking it lying down. They have served notice to their officers who work in the region not to hesitate, but to report cases of that nature because they cannot stand the abuses people like just very DCE is alleged to have done. But if you see the DCE, he is of some calm disposition, someone who you would think cannot hurt a fly, cannot, in fact, do anything like that. We are even told that he is a reverend. And so it comes as a surprise to many in the region and many who know him to attribute such an incident to him.
Well, Richard, listen, we're going to stay with the matter, irrespective of what the person looks like. And I can assure you that we'll put the spotlight on this. So get ready. I will be calling you a lot and we'll be updating our viewers on this matter. It's really, really important that we see to the end of it. So Richard Kojanyako, thank you so much for the update this morning.
Thank you.
And attend to your phone calls. Richard Kojanyako is our Central Regional Correspondent, giving us an update on this important issue of a DCE who assaulted a policeman. Now we know that the policeman at the center of this has been transferred, obviously because the DCE is still at post. He's still the district chief. He chairs the security in the district, which means that he will be working closely with him. So it's understandable that he's been transferred. But we're going to be following through on this matter for you. We've got one more thing before we say goodbye on the AM show. It's show business, and Kadi is here.